Hello, my name is Savannah Islam, and today we're going to be speaking about risk perception and firefighter safety. So, if you've been watching the news lately, you probably saw the coverage about the LA wildfires, but firefighters do a lot more than just fight fires. They're actually a big portion of our first response to any kind of emergency, including medical emergencies, which is a big portion of their calls, car accidents, hard to reach rescues like elevators, water rescues, natural disasters, collapsed buildings, and then hazardous chemical and waste spills. And speaking of, these pictures show some of the crucial moments in our nation's history. The New York Firefighting Department responding to the 9/11 attacks and the Oklahoma City bombing downtown. That brings us to the main topic of today, which is the overall human factor problem of safety and how risk perception and decision making play into that. So, firefighters are exposed to a lot of different risks. This includes physical and heat stressors on the daily during their jobs. This can cause injuries, medical problems, musculoskeletal issues. They're exposed to a lot of toxic chemicals. A big concern is the cancer that is caused by asbestos exposure. A lot of the things they experience as far as risks are long term. That can make it difficult to pin down, but this includes trauma and high stress, which leads to PTSD and depression. They witness a lot of death and human suffering, as you can imagine. So the data actually shows 80,000 injuries a year just in the US firefighters alone, and that they are 2 to 3 times more likely to be injured than the general labor population. So risk perception can be defined as an individual's perceived susceptibility to a threat. Um, Basically making a judgment on how risky a situation is. Um, the risk assessment factors are directly associated with injuries, acute stress because of critical job events, increased risk perception of emergency scenarios, and risk perception depends a lot on the occupational culture and the local culture. Different countries have different ideas of bravery. Different jobs, like firefighters, are known to encourage people to have a tough skin. And this can mean that they overestimate their capabilities or underestimate potential risks to fall in line with that. And that can be problematic as far as making good decisions and having good risk perception. So why this is so important is that it is a snowball effect. So if you have poor risk perception, you have poor judgment of the situation. If you have poor judgment, you're likely to make poor decisions. Poor decisions are what eventually leads to more accidents. It's often a snowball effect. One poor decision means you're more likely to make more and more until there is an accident or even a fatality. Risk perception is an evaluation of both external and internal states. So that's what the book talked about. That has to deal with outside situations, circumstances, the environment, um, assessing that, and then the internal state, meaning your skills or your capabilities. Are you able to rise to the risks that the environment is posing to you? Um, so, more training, practical experience, and acute stress reactions were correlated with higher risk perception. And then I had put this decide model that the book talked about. These have the 6 steps in making a decision. So, what's important is the initial risk perception is what can lead you to make a make or break decision, especially in critical moments when you're working in emergency and first response. That it becomes increasingly important because it could be life or death, and on a large scale with a lot of lives at stake. Um, but I have a real world example of this. poor risk perception. So the studies show that as firefighters get more experienced and more tenured, their risk perception actually is lowered. And this could just be to repeated exposure, multiple false alarms, maybe, and overall just getting more used to the situation. So more experienced firefighters become complacent and they underestimate the risks of new situations just because they've experienced so many similar ones in the past that they start to become kind of numb to it, which can lead you to underestimate a risk of a new situation, and that could actually be, what causes an accident. There are some really exciting and promising things, though, in terms of firefighter safety that has to do with new technology that's being introduced, like the use of drones to go into critical situations that could potentially help save more lives and put less risk on the individual firefighter. So that's exciting. I have a list of my references here. And that is all. Thank you very much.